Hi, Marcus. Thanks for agreeing to meet us here on RedTalks. It's lovely to have you. Marcus, you're head of counselling at a treatment centre called Broadway Lodge in North Somerset. And I think I'll leave it to you to introduce to us exactly who you are and what you're about, if that's okay.
Okay, so Stacey, thank you for inviting me to share my story with you, and it's lovely to see you as always. So I'm head of treatment and counselling at Broadway Lodge, which is a 12-step, well, it's a 12-step treatment centre, a 12-step South Foundation, but I'll talk about that later because we've made some changes to develop it. But I'm head of treatment and counselling. I've been here for, I think, 9, maybe 10 years. I'm a fully qualified counsellor, stroke psychotherapist. I also have a diploma in leadership and management. I am also a qualified surveyor, which was my previous career before I came to Broadway Lodge in North Somerset. So I kind of have a business and a professional background before I came into working in this business. I also run my own recovery house called The Sober Place, which is a small 3-bedroomed recovery support house, which I love. And then I also run my own counselling private practice, which I work with 2 clients one evening a week. And I just keep a waiting list of when one finishes, then I bring somebody else in. That's what I do. I am a very, very, very busy person. I love it. I absolutely love it.
That makes me even more grateful for you to making the time to join us today. Cool. I'm going to start asking you some questions, Marcus, a little bit about your kind of path on recovery, I suppose. Cool. Tell us a little bit about what brought you into recovery.
Right. Okay. So where do we start? What brought me to recovery? Well, I'd say with most people, it's almost like a rock bottom. But for me, I just got to the end of that using life. I'd got to the end of it. I was around people that I couldn't stand. I knew that I was better than that. And I just wanted a way out. And that's it. I hit a rock bottom. I moved from, I'd done the geographicals, as they say. I'd moved from North London to East London and all that kind of stuff around London and the Southeast. And I got to a place called Deptford in Southeast London. And it was the grimiest, most horrible, wretched place for drug using that I'd ever been to. And God bless the people that live there and some of the people that are still in addiction. But that took it out of me, being amongst people using in that particular locality, Deptford, which they call the ghetto, was absolutely awful. And that was the end of it for me, and I couldn't wait to get out of it. I went to a place called it was a CDP in Forest Hill. Her name, I can't remember her name. Rennie, was it Rennie? Can't remember her name. Oh my God, I can't even remember her name. But it begins with R. I just went and explained that I'd had enough. I needed to get out of this life that I was in. And she, that was in 2005, she arranged a detox for me at what do you call it? I can't even remember. It's this hospital in Bromley. I can't remember the name of the hospital, but she arranged this detox for me, and I kid you not, when she said that she was going to get me into detox, right? It was like I still had to keep using, but I wrote this letter. I had this letter which said that I was going to detox on this day, And I used to carry this letter with me everywhere when I was going shoplifting, right? So that if I got nicked, right, the police would see that I was trying to make an effort, and I didn't really want to do what I didn't really want to be doing this, and I was going to detox. And I just prayed every day when I got out, please God, let me get home tonight. And I never forget, I can still remember the relief of the night before when I was going to detox and knowing that I would never have to do that again. I was just, honestly, I can still remember it now, in this stupid little squat, this stupid little flat that I was in Forest Hill. And I couldn't wait. Honestly, I couldn't wait. I never forget getting into that detox bed and lying down, thinking, oh my God, thank God for that. I didn't even know about rehab or anything them times there. I was just in this, all I knew I was going to detox. That was all I knew. It's just, I'll never forget that. I couldn't wait to get out of it.
Yeah.
So what was the,
I remember
honestly,
that.
I just remember it. It's just, yeah.
So I suppose you've kind of answered this question. How did you get into recovery? But had you tried before? What was different about this time?
Okay, so let me just take a couple of steps back about recovery. So when I got into that detox place, I didn't even know where all I knew was I was in this detox. I didn't know about rehab or recovery. All I was told is that I was going to rehab. I didn't really get a choice about where I was going. I don't really remember it all. All I know is that I did. I had 2 assessments. So the social worker arranged 2 assessments. And I was going to one in Weston-super-Mare and one in St Anne's up in Blackpool. It's now closed down. And the one in Weston-super-Mare, I got there and I felt really, really comfortable. I got to Weston-super-Mare and we ended up on this little old train coming from Bristol. And it was just like a lovely day out. It was just a lovely day out from the detox place. This other place up in St Anne's, it was so militant. When they finished the assessment, I literally ran like Forrest Gump from their rehab back to the station. Right, I definitely ain't going there. And it ended up in a place called Sanctuary Alcohol Addiction Services. And it was, to be honest with you, it was the everybody. It was an all-male rehab. It was full of testosterone. Broadway Lodge certainly wouldn't have. Where I work now, we didn't take those kind of clients. They were all prison heads and that kind of stuff. But if I'm honest with you, I had the time of my life in rehab. It was the best time ever. It was funny. We used to have a laugh. We weren't using anymore. I made friendships, which I still have today. And then they just kind of set us on the path to recovery. But obviously, whilst you're there, you're doing counselling. But to be honest with you, I was grateful for being out of London, a warm bed, food that was cooked for you, and just being around people that, being around normal people that weren't using. And there was some funky behaviours in there, as there always are. And this place was full of testosterone. Group therapy was rather challenging because it was all men. And, you had your inhibitions about, not wanting to get upset and all that kind of stuff. And, the counsellors made you cry and you didn't really want to show your feelings, but, it was wonderfully, beautifully, painfully healing. I loved it. 6 months of that. I couldn't wait. I just couldn't wait because I came from something, because I had a life and a career before addiction. I knew that I was made. I knew that I was better than that. So I just knew I just couldn't wait to leave treatment. But I did 6 months there. Went into the dry house, and then obviously with treatment they introduce you to Narcotics Anonymous. As a matter of fact, I never forget when they introduced me to Narcotics Anonymous. It was in detox, right? And I never forget. And I saw the woman that come in and did HMI So it's 13 and a half, 13 and a half years later, I'm at the NA convention in London, right? I see her. And you know, like I remember her from the share. I remember her because she was at H&I. I looked. I was like, no, that's the woman. That's she coming to H&I, and we've been friends ever. We've been friends ever since. I was just like, you. And she's like, but she didn't remember me. But why would she? Because she didn't do H&I. It was like 14 years ago. Yeah, I'd never. They came in, and I looked at them, and I thought, there was this guy who was doing the share, and I looked at him and I thought, yeah, he used to use you. Just, you know, when you just know, you just looked at him, but when I looked at him, he was clean, and I knew he was clean. I just knew, and he said, this is the way he done it, and he just mentioned this word, Narcotics Anonymous. That's the way to do it. That's all I heard. I didn't hear anything else, and I said, I'm definitely doing that, because if he can do it, I definitely can do it. And he looked like, no disrespect to him, he looked like a proper junkie, you know, one of them proper using guys. That and I, you know, with my little arrogance and stuff, I thought, well, if he can, I definitely can. But I remember I heard Karen. Oh my God, I'd never forget when I saw her, and I said to her, I'm still clean. And she said, and I told her where I saw her. She was gobsmacked. She couldn't even remember, but you know, it's just at that point, it's just loving it, because I remembered her, and when I remembered her and said, you know, you did H&I at this place at this time, and I was there, and I remember you, and it was her. It's just amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing. It's just amazing. I love stuff like that. I love it. So anyway,
I love that you're still friends. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I remembered her. That was the thing. It's just like, I remember you. Yeah, it was wicked. And she's done shares for me and all sorts since then as well.
Okay.
Cool.
So I take it from that you've never experienced a relapse since
Absolutely.
That treatment.
Absolutely not. I'm too damn scared. Honestly, all I've done is just looked and listened to other people and thought, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. And to be honest with you, that's just the way it's been for me. I'm too scared to go back to Stacey. I hated that life. The thought of going back to that life still gives me a no way moment. When I see people that are still using and in the grips of it, it doesn't frighten me, but I never want to go back there. I never want to go back there. That life was hell. That life was hell. And where my using took me to is I've got involved with people that were, God bless them, but I got involved with some really wicked people, and that's where and I just wasn't like that. And I ended up being around and being involved with people that made me frightened and scared and anxious, and I just could never go back to that. So that's the reason why I've never relapsed. I'm just no way. I'm too scared. I'm too scared to go back to that life, because I know that I wouldn't survive. No, I wouldn't survive.
And in Narcotics Anonymous, you know, we're taught that we don't have to go back, which is
absolutely.
So have you found any other behaviours or addictions that have popped up in your recovery?
Yes. Yes. So yeah. So the first thing that popped up for me was my how can I put it professionally. I messed around with lots of females. I don't know how you describe that, but that's how I seem to get my self-worth back. Lots of girlfriends and going out and doing my thing and enjoying it and blah blah blah. And that's kind of really been the main one. You know, I've never. I think kind of the relationship one, kind of, you know, in a relationship, out of a relationship, in another relationship, out of another. you know, in, out. That's kind of really been the main one. And then all the kind of feelings and behaviours associated with it. But to be honest with you, I was like that before I was using. So, you know, all I did was just pick up where I left. All I did was pick up where I left from until it started to get a little bit difficult, a little bit challenging, a little bit painful. And then when I started training as a counsellor, the owner of the organisation said to me that I needed to look at and address that behaviour, and I couldn't behave in that particular way in the town because that would kill my career. So I then began to address it through a series of different circumstances. But that was kind of really the main one that kind of popped up, is the needing to be with somebody in a relationship, or, you know, but everything else has just been kind of real, just slow recovery, growth type thing more than anything else.
Thank you for your honesty with that, because I think that's one that hits a lot of people. So what challenges have you faced, Marcus, and what would you say you've learned from those challenges?
Oh my God. Okay, so I think, to be honest with you, the biggest challenge I faced was ending my marriage. Okay, that was, if I'm honest with you, that was harder than my detox. The detox was sweet, it was easy. I wanted to get up. But saying to my wife that I no longer wanted to be in a marriage with her, and my wife, also my ex-wife, is absolutely beautiful inside and out, but we were just not suited. I met her when I was in secondary care in treatment, and we got together, and then we split up because I wanted to cheat. I wanted to run around. I had this new world that I'd been missing for 15 years. So I wanted to be out there. But she was lovely. And I knew it's probably one of the most grown-up decisions. There's 2 grown-up decisions I made back then. So I said to her, it got to the point where it wasn't going to work because she wanted a commitment. I wasn't quite ready to commit to her. And so we had to say goodbye. I'll never forget. So the first time we finished in 2007, and I just remember holding her and crying and saying, I can't be with you because I want to run around. And she said, I know. And it's just mad. Honestly, it's crazy. Recovery is just amazing. So she let me go and I went off. But what started to happen is all the people around me started settling down. And there was me, like some young buck running around in the field, you know, just having fun. I couldn't settle down. And then she came back and I saw her again, yeah? And she came back and I thought, yes, this is the one. But this was 4 years later. So I'm settling down because everybody else is settling down. And so, you know, I'm moving with her. And then I went to a wedding. I went to my friend's wedding and he got married and I was at the wedding and I said to myself, you know what, if he can do that, so can I. So a year later we were married. It was amazing. The only thing is that I had changed and she had changed and we were not the same people that we met in 2007. And do you know what? My sponsor said to me, because I'm still involved in Narcotics Anonymous, although there are other ways to recover, which I'm going to talk to you about as well. It's not just about the 12-step program. There are many ways to recover. And I want everybody to embrace all different approaches and not just the 12-step approaches, because not one size fits all. However, my sponsor said to me when we started to do the work around my marriage, relationship and how it broke apart, he said to me, Marcus, you actually got married on a character defect. I was like, really? And he said, yeah, you got married on the character defect of jealousy and envy. Guess what? It was true. It was true. I was at a wedding. My friend got married. I thought, if he can get married, so can I. But me and my wife had changed. Or my ex-wife, we weren't the same people that we were when we met. And then when we got back together. So unsurprisingly, it lasted 5 years. And I had to love her enough to let her go. And that was the hardest thing, because she hadn't cheated, I hadn't cheated, we hadn't had a fight. It wasn't one of those ones. It was a realization that actually, I don't love you anymore. Oh my God, that I can't even tell you how painful that is. Yeah. Clean. I can't even tell you. I knew that when I would tell her, I knew it would break her heart. Yeah. And that was harder. If I'm honest, that was harder than getting clean. That was harder than getting clean. And that period, the turmoil that I was in telling her I wouldn't want to, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. So that was one of my trials and tribulations. The second big trial and tribulation was a work situation where I got into a battle with a previous CEO here, who was no longer here, who, if I just say it as it is, it was racism. Okay, so he made some racial, he tried to get rid of me. He tried to get rid of me. He tried to get rid of me underhandedly. And it was all about kind of his self-worth and self-esteem and seeing me as a threat. Now, I wasn't a threat to him at all, but that's how he saw it. And then he tried to get rid of me underhandedly, and I just fought it and fought him. And it got to a point where I said to him, it was me or him, one of us had to go, we wouldn't be able to work together. And then we both just went at it, but we went through the HR process, and he's no longer here, and I'm still here. We're here to tell the tale and supported by the team and the organisation. But that was hell. That happened. So that happened whilst my marriage was breaking up as well. And that was hell. And I found out during that point that I suffered with anxiety, something that I absolutely did not know until I got to a point where I didn't want to leave home. And a friend of mine said to me, that you're suffering with anxiety, you need to go and see a doctor. And when the light bulb just came, I thought, oh man, I've always been like this. And then I went to the doctor. The doctor gave me some medication, started to feel better, and then I just eased myself off a bit. So some, what is it? Citalopram he gave me. Is it citalopram? No. Yeah, was it citalopram? I don't remember what he gave me. But it was for anxiety anyway. So that was the second challenge. And if I'm honest, I'm really proud of myself for fighting that, because I hadn't done anything to him, and I hadn't, I'm a good person. I hadn't done anything to him, but I was then tasked with having to fight a system, and injustice, and I'm all about that. That's what I do. I stand up for myself. I stand up for other people, and particularly around equality, diversity, race, gender. But this one was very, very personal to me.
Yeah.
And I had to stand up to him. So that was really, really, really challenging. And there's a third one. I had quite a difficult childhood. My mum left when I was 4 years old and my brother was 3. My dad was in the Black Power movement in the 1970s and ended up going to prison and stuff, and tried to bring 2 boys up by himself. And so so my mum leaving growing up without your mother makes life a little bit challenging, to say the least. Unbeknown to me, I didn't realise how much of an impact that had on me. And I'd always tried to please my dad and make him, I guess what I'd say, make him love me in a way that I felt I needed it. But my dad wasn't really capable of that at the time, but I didn't see it. I didn't see it. So I think about 8 years in recovery, I decided, I had an argument with my dad and we'd come to blows and we tried to resolve it and we resolved it a bit. And then my brother had an argument with my dad and come to blows. And at that point, I said, we're done. I cut contact with him. I never spoke to my dad. I wrote him a letter saying that we're done. And I almost felt like I'd cut the imaginary umbilical cord still attached to him, although, my mum had long left and, I've still got a relationship with my mum, but there was an attachment to my dad, obviously father-son thing. And I felt like I just needed to free myself from it. And to be honest with you, it was a wonderful 11 years of not having that attachment. But the thing about being in recovery is that if you're in recovery, then you're recovering if you're doing the work around yourself. And I'm a father as well, and I work in a treatment centre and I'm teaching recovery. And it's funny how these places are so magical in the way that they work. So recently, one day, I've got 2 residents in rehab. This is about 3 months ago, and this story is just absolutely amazing. And it's the power of recovery. It's the power of God, higher power. Call it what you want. Right? Everybody can relate to it. One of the things that I've tried to bring about here, the changes here, is that we are all equal here. I'm a senior manager. Yes, I'm head of treatment. Yes, I'm head of treatment counselling, and I've had a few years in recovery. But please believe me, I can learn from these guys. Right? I learn from them. They learn from me. I've just got a few years down the line from them. But trust me, we're now equal. It wasn't like that before, but it is now. It's a level playing field. And they respect this new way of working. So one day, as usual, I'm always thinking about how can I help these guys? How can I help? Because 2 of them had a resentment, and they were at it with each other in treatment. It was just so corrosive. You know what it can be like. It was infected everywhere. How can I help them? So I think about this situation about my dad and the resentment. But the resentment over the years has been falling away from me as I'm starting to grow and develop as a person. I've not got the anger that I had is no longer there. When I got married in 2013, the 8th of June, I didn't invite my dad to the wedding, but I invited his wife, my stepmom. She arrived late for my wedding. I was fuming. I was absolutely fuming. So I never spoke to her for 5 years. And I had this resentment festering inside me, which it does. It just fuming with. I was so angry with her, but I never spoke to her. Anyway, one day, 5 years later, my marriage is 6.5 years later, my marriage is ended. I'm at my brother's house in London. My stepmom phones, right? My brother says, oh, Markus is here. And she said, oh, let me speak to him. So she comes on the phone. I say to her, she says to me, how are you? And I said, well, actually, I don't really want to have any small talk right now. Why was you late for my wedding? Straight up, that's what I said to her. She said, oh yes. And I said, and why didn't you apologize? She said, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that I'd hurt you that much. The reason why I arrived late for your wedding was because I was arguing with your dad that morning who didn't want me to go. Literally, resentment dropped off of me immediately. Felt so ashamed. I'd been so angry with her for all that time. Anyway, so so I'm bringing that situation into rehab because what I was trying to do is give these guys real life situation, real life events of somebody in recovery practicing this thing and showing them that it works. So I bring it to them. I tell them the story of what happened with my stepmom and how the resentment I had with her fell off on the phone. I couldn't believe it. I was embarrassed. was embarrassed. And then she said, and then she started to speak to me about the way that I treated her at the wedding. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I was so ashamed of myself. Anyway, so we spoke and we kept in contact. Anyway, so I'm bringing this situation to rehab, right? So I'm trying to help these two guys. So I tell them about the resentment, and they're in the story with me. They're like, really? And I start to tell them about my dad, and I've started to soften towards my dad and recognizing that some of the things that he used to say were actually true, but his delivery was terrible. Okay, my dad's delivery was awful. But what he was saying was actually correct. Unbeknown to me, Stacey, I kid you not, unbeknown to me, the day before, I'd got a text from my friend about a documentary that was on TV about probably 2 months ago. It was called A History of Black Power in Britain. Google it on the iPlayer, right? So on the Tuesday, I'd done the lecture. On the Tuesday, I'd done the lecture. On the Wednesday, I was sitting down at my girlfriend's house to watch this TV program. I kid you not, 2 minutes into the program, my dad was on the TV. I jumped out. I was like, oh my God. My friends hadn't told me that my dad was being featured in this documentary. Okay. Now, my dad went to prison in 1972 for something that he didn't do. Okay. He was accused of stealing handbags on the London Underground. He was framed by him. My dad was part of this group called the Oval Four. It's all on Google. You can Google it. He was part of the Oval Four, and he was accused of stealing somebody's handbag. They went to prison for a few years for doing something that he didn't do. Okay, so I'm watching this program. My dad was big into the Black Power movement. He was one of the Windrush children. He came over here in that generation of people. Okay, and he experienced hell. Yeah, Stacey, I didn't know anything about this. I'm watching my dad. Literally, I'm watching my dad's life. I'm watching my childhood through the lens of BBC TV. Literally, I couldn't even believe what was happening to me. And then in that documentary, my dad said, and I woke up in prison on my oldest son's birthday, the 9th of November. Oh my God, Stacey, he was talking about me. He didn't even know that I was going to watch that. Literally, the resentment went that night. And I just felt so ashamed of myself. The next day, I brought it into, I'm lecturing the next day. And I've come to the patients and I've said to the patient, you're not going to believe this. And I tell them the story. They're in it with me now, right? We're all in this, working through this resentment. That's what I'm saying, honestly, recovery is just, honestly, it is amazing, right? So I tell the residents here the story that you're not going to believe this. My dad was on TV last night. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I told them the story, and I go into shame and guilt and feeling sad. I watched my childhood through the lens of my dad, and do you know what? I didn't have a clue what my dad had been through. Not a clue. So, but my dad mentions me. My dad mentions me. He mentions my birthday. I'm in recovery. I can't ignore that. If I've got any integrity, I'm head of treatment and counselling at Broadway Lodge. I'm in recovery. I've got any integrity. I've got to do something about that. So I think, what can I do? Well, I think, what can I do? I ask some suggestions to people. I ask some friends. Everybody says, write him a letter, because I don't know his number or anything, because I've stopped speaking to him. They changed his number. So I start to write a letter, right? And I kid you not, the letter is beautiful, right? It's just humble. It's beautiful. I wish I had it. I wish I could read it to you. It's beautiful. I then pass it to my sponsor. He rewrites it. He makes it. He adds a couple of words to it, and it's just amazing. I pass it to one of my friends. She reads it. She adds a little bit to it. It's a collaboration. I send it to my dad. My stepmom rings me and she said, when he gets the letter, obviously I'm nervous. Oh, let me just add a little bit to the story. My sponsor says, aren't you going to add the letter that you love it? nervous. I didn't want to add it. I didn't want to be rejected. I realized that I'm still, when it came to my dad, in all my relationships, I am a man. But when it came to my relationship with my dad, I was still a boy. Honestly, from this whole process has just been fantastic. So I think to myself, I said to myself, no, I can't put that in there. He said, okay, then I'll get angry with my sponsor for not. And then I think about it, I let it ruminate and I put it in there. I send the letter down to London. My stepmom rings my brother. She doesn't tell me, she rings my brother and she says, oh my God, your brother sent this beautiful letter and it's just dropped. It's like it's dropped a nuclear bomb in our house. Your dad is just, he's all over the place. He doesn't know what to do. Just remember, I haven't spoken to him for 11 years. But the letter is just amazing, right? It's a collaboration. It's a recovery collaboration from people that have helped me to get to. 2 days later, I'm wondering what's happened. I get home Friday evening. I open the door. There's a letter. I look. It's my dad's handwriting. I literally jump out my skin. Oh my God, he's written back to me. It was just, I remember my dad's handwriting. I know exactly what it looks like. I'm scared. I don't even want to open the envelope because I think, what if he rejects me? Come on, get yourself together. Don't be stupid. Open the letter. So I opened the letter. Trust me, Stacey, when I tell you, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The words that he writes are just my dad. And what he says basically says in that letter is that he could not have explained his life to me better than the TV program had. And now we're communicating. Honestly.
That's beautiful.
Those are but I've shared this in real time with my guys and it's helped them to get over there, work through their resentments, and that it's a process. And bear in mind, this is 16 years later, that I'm still doing this stuff. And, and I guess as head of treatment and counselling here, leading recovery with integrity, practicing what I preach, so that they feel it. It's a soulful experience for them. I share, whilst, self-disclosure and all that kind of stuff, there's a professional boundary, but done in the right situation will always help somebody. Done up through ego doesn't. Been wonderful. Those have been the biggest three things. And the one that I shared about my dad has been literally in the last 3 months. It's still on the iPlayer now. The Black Power. And oh my God, Stacey, and guess what then? So my phone, when I was watching the original A History of Black Power in Britain, my phone started to blow up. Markus, your dad's on. Yeah, I know. I can't. Shut up, get off the phone. Right. Is that your dad? Is that your dad? I was like, yes, I didn't even know he was gonna. Did you know? No, I didn't know. Then 2 weeks later, he's in another documentary about bent coppers. I'm just like, my phone starts blowing up again. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching my dad in another documentary, and now he's writing a book. He's on this, he's on that. Yeah, he was in 2019. He was at the Old Bailey, and he had his conviction overturned for what happened. They were able to see that the officer that that was involved in the conviction was Ben. He'd also gone to prison. But my dad fought that 47 years to get justice. 47. But what that did to my dad turned me and my brother's life upside down. Yeah. What that did, and I'm not saying that my addiction was a result of that, but I certainly had a very challenging childhood as a result of some of the things that happened to him and the racism that my dad experienced in this country, which, I used to feel sorry for myself around my addiction. I used to. But watching that program and seeing what my dad experienced as a young man coming to this country made me wake up fast. And I thought to myself, wow. And I thought I had it bad. And all this time, I had this massive resentment. I have nothing but admiration and respect for my dad for doing what he'd done and fighting justice and getting justice for himself, fighting injustice, excuse me, and getting justice for himself. 47 years later, that's my story. Life is wicked. I love it. And that's what recovery does. Reconnections.
He sounds like an amazing man, Marcus. You must take after him.
Stacey, he's a real life superhero. And I was living with one and I didn't realize. That's how I refer to him as. He's a real life superhero. I didn't even know that. I was living with one. It's amazing.
So you've talked a lot about kind of challenges and stuff that you've had, Marcus. I suppose my next question would be, if you had your time again, would you change anything?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So
do you feel like you have to pinch yourself sometimes to say like, oh my God, this is actually my life? So
I feel like that's a lovely leading question because it's beautiful. I do sometimes think, wow, my life is amazing. And you hear that, you know, you hear people say that, right? And you think, really? You know, I used to think, really? But the truth is when you've been to hell, you know, I don't believe in the concept of hell and heaven and when we die. I've experienced hell on earth, trust me, and I've experienced heaven. And I'm quite right now, I'm in a period where life is just amazing. It really is, you know. So back in the day, there used to be, I used to be an estate agent before I became a surveyor, right? So this, we're talking about 1988, 89. There was this manager called Mark Trew. He was the manager of Jackson Property Service. He was one of the area managers of Jackson Property Services, and Jackson's were bought out by Halifax and they became Halifax Property Services. That was back in the era of being a yuppie, right? That's what I aspired to be, a yuppie, right? That was what I wanted to be. Okay. Mark Trew, he was the most sophisticated. He looked amazing. He drove a Porsche. When he walked through the door, he'd smile and you just think, oh, well, I used to think, wow, I would love to be that man. He was just amazing. He was amazing. And I've never forgotten him. I've never forgotten him. And I wanted to be the manager that walked through, empowered, developed, supported, and built people up, right? I went on a career path, and that was my aim. I wanted to be that person. I wanted to lead a team where I develop, empower, support, raise up so that they can be the best people they can be, right? I never actually wanted to be a counsellor. That just came by accident, to be honest with you. And it still was never my career choice. You know, I wanted to be a manager that develops teams. So cool. I got there. That's where I got to. But I came through counselling and psychotherapy and addiction. And so coming into addiction helped me to get to the place that I wanted to be. It just took a little bit longer. And I went a different route. So the only thing, if I was ever going to change anything, would have been around my son. My son lives in London. He's wonderful, amazing. We have the best relationship ever. My son is just the best. But that would be the only thing that I would have changed, is I would have wanted him with me. I had to kind of let his mother bring him up. And I didn't want to split him up. It was, and that's the only thing. But other than that, absolutely not. You know, I'm living my best life, and it's still getting better. So no, I wouldn't change anything other than I still have that moment Well, I wish that as a father that I woke up with my son every day, and my daughter, and took them to school, and you know, the long distance. You know, you would never know. You would never know if you saw my. You'd never know. Me and my son are just amazing together. But it's the one regret that I have. I wish that I brought him up every day to school, to secondary, whereas I was, you know, from 5 years old, I was a long distance dad, and then, you know, he was with me in the summer holidays and that kind of stuff, and that's the only other thing. But I would change nothing, not a thing. And even some of the real painful experiences that I've had, and when I say painful, I mean, so the stories that I've told you about, you know, my wife and that, but kind of like being rejected by people, the story around the CEO, for example, and the battle that I got into, relationships where, you know, I remember one girlfriend down here. I was at work one day, and a friend rang me and said, your girl's cheating on me. And I remember being in that place again. I remember being in that place when my son's mother left me, and having that same feeling. But this time I was able to turn around to one of the counsellors and said, look, I'm in a bit of a situation. I remember, God bless you, Mark. That was the counsellor. He said to me, go and do what you need to do, come back to work. I left. I rung the girlfriend, Jane. I said to her, Jane, with all the best will and love in the world, you've got to leave my house right now. And literally, I had to clear her things out of my house. I dropped her to where she needed to be, which is her new man's house. And I was able to go back to work and then deal with my feelings with the support of people around me, which was great. Other than that, you know, in the past, I would have crumbled. So, yeah, good. But no, it's just, no, I wouldn't change things. I've had some challenging experiences. I've had some difficult experiences, but I wouldn't change. No, I wouldn't change it.
Say, Marcus, that I have sat in a room that you've walked into, and I myself have thought, I want to be like him. So you definitely got there on that score.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you, Mark Crowther. But thank you for saying that. I appreciate that, because that's what I've wanted to do. If I'm honest, I've wanted to be able to inspire, lead, develop, empower. You know, if people disempower people, I don't want to know you. If you're empowering people, then you're a good person. And I want to empower people, because I know what it's like to be in the doldrums, be in hell, help people to be the best people they can be.
It took 15 years of us living in very similar places for us to finally meet. And I think we eventually met at the exact right time for me. So
100%. And I think if I remember rightly, without saying too much, I just needed to point you in the right direction, and look where you are today. It was just like, no, come on now, you don't need to do this. And then you were gone, literally. Boom. And now you're interviewing me, and I'm just like, honestly, I was going to use a swear word, but I love stuff like this. Honestly, this is like seeing you and you where you are today just makes me just like, yes, that's what it's all about. And tonight I'll go home and I'll tell my sister about it. You're not going to believe, guess what happened? We did it. Because it's inspiring. It's inspiring when you know that there's so much potential. Oh man, I'll tell you what, life is beautiful. Okay, life is beautiful. The potential that humanity has to be beautiful within themselves, outside of themselves, it's just, the potential is amazing. But we're just so stuck and confined in self, in this world, in this, I don't even want to get all political, but in this kind of real capitalist, materialistic world that we live in. And if we can get out of that sometimes, everybody can aspire to be better, to do better. But you just have to find the right components, the right mechanisms, the right word, the right, the right thing, the right touch, the right hug, a bit of compassion, a bit more love, a bit more kindness, a bit more honesty. You can say anything. You can say hard things. Broadway Lodge used to be very, when people got discharged, it was quite a hard and difficult affair. You're asking people to leave somewhere where they've been for a long time and they felt safe or not. I remember speaking to you and asking you about, this place being a place of fear, and you spoke to me about that. And a few people said, no, we're not going to have that anymore. We're going to make it a place, we're going to make it what I call a therapeutic nirvana, a place where people can come and feel safe and not have the fear of being kicked out for the things that they came to address. Feel safe, feel secure, feel loved. And everything must be delivered with compassion. If it's not compassionate, don't say it around here, because I will challenge it and my team will challenge it and you'll be challenged. You can't talk to a client like that because you're frustrated. That's not about the client, that's about you. So we don't have that kind of stuff anymore. And it's wonderful. And it helps to raise people up. It's just wonderful. It helps to raise people up because everybody deserves to be the best person they can be. And that's what I'm about. That's what I'm about. I love it. It's just this. Yeah. Everybody. And we've all got our go on.
We'll come to our final question, and it has been an absolute pleasure interviewing you, and everything that you've had to say has had me enthralled. So yeah, thank you so much. But yeah, I suppose my final question is, you talked a little bit about different pathways to recovery and stuff, and if you had to give someone advice who was thinking about accessing treatment, who was thinking about stepping into recovery, if you had to offer them advice, what advice would you give them, Markus?
Okay, so recovery is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Go into one of these places and just follow what's been said and kind of trust the process. We kind of just need to be people need to be just open and honest. People just need to accept that they need help and actually follow that. That's what I've done. I just accepted that I needed the help and just followed what was suggested. I've spoken to people. I've been inspired by people. I've learned from the people that I haven't liked, to be honest with you. What I've also learned and what I would say is that, recovery isn't just about, there are several ways, there are loads of ways to recover. My brother's in recovery. My brother's never been to a narcotic. Well, my brother went to half of a Narcotics Anonymous meeting and said, "Bruv, that ain't for me." And he's recovering through the church, So whilst 12 steps isn't the only way, it's one way of many ways to recover. And there are loads of people recovering around this, thousands of people recovering, but some people don't recover the 12-step way. Abstinence, yes, definitely, but some people don't need to stay abstinent. And I'm not promoting that. But for some people, they may well be able to, but for some of us, we just don't anymore. It just makes life a little bit easier. And I say remove the choice, although there's always a choice. We can always go back to that. But I say this to anybody that comes in, that to not be controlled by a substance that you don't want to take, that you have to take to function, is the most amazing feeling ever. That's the first part. And I guess the second thing then is that having been detoxed, you will recognize that the problem isn't about drugs or alcohol. The problem is a thinking, attitude, and behavior problem, and that's what we address. That's what most of these rehabs address. They don't address substance misuse, although the myth is that the problem is drugs and alcohol, and it absolutely isn't. It's thinking, attitude, and behavior. So when we detox people, we see some very challenging and difficult behaviors. And so don't be misled. Please don't, anybody that watches this and think that they've got a drink and drug problem. Yes, you have, and that's why you'll end up at CGL, who will fund you and send you off to a rehab, or might take you through their day program or whatever it is that they intend to do for you. But you will soon find that once you're detoxed, your thinking, attitude, and behavior problem was there probably way before the drugs were ever there. And that's what these wonderful places address in different shapes, different forms, different ways. Whether it's a harm reduction, harm minimization approach, whether it's a recovery, therapeutic, abstinence-based approach, they all have places. They all can work. But as long as you're not harming yourself and harming other people, and you're trying to make some change in your life, I'm for all of the approaches. It used to probably in a time gone by be a bit dogmatic with one approach, but I'm not. I just want everybody to live the best life that they can, whatever that looks like for them, not for me, for them. So that we all can be in a place of contentment and not happiness, because happiness is momentary. Now, I could finish this interview and go and stub my toe and be very unhappy about it, but still be very content with the way my life is today. So yeah, and that's me. And that would be my advice. That'd be my advice. Get yourself into one of these organizations, one of these community teams, and start the process. And if you guys can send people to, treatment's obviously expensive. Did you see the report out, the Dame Thingy Black report about how fractured the treatment funding processes at the moment? I was reading it. Did Dame Shirley Black? Oh my God, it felt like frightening reading. So Stacey, keep doing what you're doing. Bring those people in, get them in from the cold, inspire them with your own story, with your own challenges, and get them in and keep them in. Show them compassion and love, and show them how hard you've worked to get to. Because those things, they're inspiring to people. People want to get to where you've got to. People want to hear your story without obviously too much. But and if you can make a difference, to one person. Trust me, you're doing your job, because it's hell. It's hell. And as the funding out there, these CGL and all these other community-based organizations, funding out there is absolutely crap. The service that these organizations have having to scrape together just to, if this was, I say this sometimes, if we were supporting the donkeys on Weston-super-Mare Beach, yeah, we'd get much more funding than what we do to support people with addiction, which is a trauma, which could be as a result of a trauma. Nobody chooses to live this life. If we were in an ideal world, we would follow the Portuguese route and decriminalize it for personal use and turn it into a health issue. And we'd put all the mechanisms and support in place to turn addiction into a health issue. And give all the funding needed. Controversially, before the NHS, before COVID, the government was talking about, we don't have any money for the NHS. But as soon as COVID comes, they seem to have found all this money to support the NHS and some. And we're not asking for that much. That's what we're not asking for that much to support addiction, because it's a health issue. It's not a criminal issue, it's a health issue. But if we could change that, get more people through the door, get more people to get their lives back, get more people to change, the world, societies, communities, families will be a better place. I know for certain that me and my brother being in recovery is a much better situation for my family, a much better situation for my son and everybody else around me. And I'm sure it's the same for you and everybody else that's involved in your organization, that those people that are working in this field who are in the recovery process, it's a much better situation for them. We need to bring these people in, bring them in from the cold and show them a different way of life, one that was given to me by a similar organization to CGL. Thank Renee, that's her name, Renee. Thank God for Renee. Trust me, that woman, I will love. And when you go on this journey, there's people that you meet along the way that, you just so grateful to. Of this so many of I had this counsellor called Steve. His name is Steve Bushwhacker. He's world famous down here. He was like a sorcerer when he was in group therapy. But he helped me. He helped me. He changed my life with my son. He said to me, Marcus, do you love your son? I said, yeah, of course I do. Well, show me how your behaviour is. And I tried to wriggle out of it, but he was a master craftsman in group therapy. He sliced me up in group therapy like a kebab off of a kebab thingy. By the time I finished that group therapy process, I was fuming, but I couldn't stop crying. It was so emotional. I'll never forget that experience. I'll never forget that experience, because that made me change my thinking, attitude and behaviour around my son. Where, there's a lot of people in recovery who love their children but haven't done the best thing by them because their addiction has taken a grip. And, if you're not in that, if you don't, it's really difficult to understand how this thing that you don't want to do just literally it sweeps your life away from you. I've been doing some work around compassion, right? And been to around compassion and the brain, right? And oh man, I could just go on. Addiction, right? Literally turned your life upside down in such a way, right, that it messes with your brain. So what's supposed to be a threat, right? So you've got your threat and reward system. Now, you know that drugs are bad. They're not good for you. They are a threat. But because it turns on your pleasure and reward system, you keep taking it, even though it's killing you. You know it's bad. You know it's killing you, but you can't help but take it because it's providing those chemicals to the brain that make you feel good. But yeah, it's killing you. Oh man. We need to bring more of the soldiers in from the battle. We need to bring them off the battlefield.
We do. And I think that we are both in our roles, doing our bit, Marcus, doing our bit. And I'm absolutely honoured to now be able to call you my friend, because you were that counsellor for me, and you taught me a lot. And I'll never forget the words you said to me the day I told you I was leaving. You said, okay, you said, one, have you got a plan? Because you need to have a plan. And you said, you know what you need to do, and you just need to get out there and go and be a mom to your kids. And don't let me down. and
you know what?
And that's what I did.
And you haven't. You haven't. You kept your promise.
I know that you're there. You are busy, and I understand that. But I know that I pick up the phone or I message you and I'm in need, that you're there. And I'm truly honoured to have you in my life and blessed to have
Ditto.
you.
And me too. It's a reciprocal relationship.
It sure is.
It ain't one way. It ain't one way at all. I feel blessed to have you in my life too. So I love to hear what's going on with the children. I love to see how well you're doing. I love the fact that you returned to Scotland and you're inspiring the people up there. I love it. That's what you was always meant to do. That's what you was always meant.
This is about you. So thank you. You are an amazing man, and it's been fantastic to be able to let you tell, you know, some of our people up here a tiny bit of your story. Super, super proud of you and everything that you're achieving down there. Absolutely phenomenal, you know, the changes that you've made at Broadway Lodge.
And, thank you.
And thank you so much for talking to us today. So I'm just going to end it there, Markus. Thank you so much.
Cool.